LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube right now. So if you're listening, say hello. I'm here today with Debby Stone, and Debbie's in Atlanta, and I'm in New York, and we'd love to know if you're listening, if you're here, let us know you can hear us. Let us know where you are right now. Last week I had somebody listening in India and also Australia at the same time, so that was pretty cool. So sometimes we have some really international conversations here.
Oh, that's great.
And we'll get started in just a minute here. I'm going to go check on the LinkedIn connection, and then we'll get going. All right. Give me one moment here, and then we'll get started. All right. So if you're listening here, I'm here again with Debby Stone today. So if you're listening, give us a shout, give us a like, give us a reaction, and let us know where you're watching from. Welcome, everybody. Today's episode of Coffee with Entrepreneurs Live is featuring Debby Stone. Debby, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
It's so great to see you. How are you doing during all this craziness?
I'm doing well, thank you. Staying safe and just wearing my mask when I'm out with other people and staying my social distance of 6 feet. So, how about you?
Same. I haven't gone out for more than an hour in a really long time, it feels like. So, but I was already working from home, and you were too, right?
I was, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yep. So it's nice when that part was easy because there was no new setup to be done.
Yeah, exactly. So the first question I ask everybody on here, because it is Coffee with Entrepreneurs, is how do you take your coffee? And if you don't drink coffee, how do you start your day?
So I do drink coffee, although I didn't until probably about 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And started at that time, and I drink my coffee fully adulterated with vanilla soy milk and stevia.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what made you go from not drinking coffee to drinking coffee?
So I'm from the South, and I had a soda addiction. So I drank soda in the morning. And knowing how horrible soda is for you, I decided to make a healthier choice and move to coffee. But I had to sweeten it up to make it worth drinking for me.
Well, that's good. That's coffee is good for you.
Yes. A whole lot better than diet soda.
Yeah. No, exactly. Good morning. We have Kishana here. Thanks for watching. And so if you're watching, let us know how you take your coffee, or if you don't drink coffee, how you drink your tea, or whatever it is that makes you start your day. I myself am a coffee drinker. My thing right now is a oat milk lavender infused latte. There's a place near me that makes this fantastic lavender latte, and it's just it's joy in a cup. So
lovely.
And I respect non-coffee drinkers, but I find that having that little boost in the morning is wonderful. So, welcome, fellow coffee drinker. So, tell us a little bit about what you're up to these days, what you do, where you are in your business.
Sure. So my business is called Novateur Partners. We're an executive coaching and leadership development company, and I've had the company for the last 18 plus years. So it's been an interesting time. We've gone through other economic cycles and shifts in the way that people have been working, but of course nothing like this. And so we were fortunate because the coaching work that we do and the workshops and speaking that we do are all able and have been able to pivot. So we're doing one-on-one executive coaching online, and we're delivering a lot of workshops to organizations via Zoom and other web platforms. So there was a slow time during the beginning of the pandemic. I think everybody just felt so scared and uncertain.
Yeah.
And now that we've settled in a little bit, business is picking back up, which is wonderful.
Thank goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was, nobody knew what was going to happen, right?
Yeah.
It was this moment in time, and of course, still nobody knows what's going to happen, but, we've seemed to have settled into the uncertainty, right?
Right.
Exactly. So that's great. And you were working from home. How has work changed for you during this time?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's changed tremendously. So I've had a home office for many years, but it was the base point. And I and the other coaches on the team would leave our home offices and go and meet one-on-one, face-to-face with clients in the city that we're in and all over the country. Yeah. So I'm a traveler, several times a month traveler traditionally. So it's been a real shift to talk with everybody over Zoom or phone and not go to different offices, not go to different cities. And I haven't been on a plane since end of February.
Yeah. Well, same. I mean, we met in person in Atlanta, and that was the last place I went. It was like, it feels like, in February, that feels like years ago now, where I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, I was on a plane. But so you've seen a slowdown in the travel. What do your days look like now?
So now my days are really organized around coaching conversations that are on the schedule. I make sure I get out and walk every day, which becomes increasingly hard when it says it's 92 degrees, feels like 103 outside. But been doing it anyway. I was a member of an exercise studio, and they have put all their classes on Zoom. It's a bar class. So I work out in my basement now instead of with a group of people via Zoom, and really organize my days much as I did before, which is predominantly around the coaching conversations or workshops I'm delivering, but with the leeway that we all have now, to sort of do something around the house in between. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when it comes to coaching, who do you normally coach? What sort of things are you seeing in this time?
Yeah, so our work is basically in two camps. We work primarily with lawyers because me and several of the other people on the team have legal backgrounds, and then we also work with people who are either entrepreneurs or in the corporate world. And generally, our work falls into three buckets. We do work that I would call executive coaching, which is helping leaders do what they do better. We also do career coaching, helping people make some sort of change or transition or plan for their careers. And then we work with lawyers and other professional services people on business development. And what we've noticed during the pandemic is that a lot of our work has shifted to the career coaching side and the business development side. So leaders right now are pretty crunched. So there's some leadership development work going on, but mostly leaders are just trying to be leaders and make the hard decisions that they need to make. We're encouraging leaders to take the time to do some coaching because it can make their jobs easier and help support them. Yeah.
So how do we make hard decisions during this time? What do you recommend?
So I recently wrote a blog on this, so your question is great. My belief is that really there are several components to great decision making. The first is to really know your values or the culture of the company that you're in, what's important to you or your organization. What are those guiding principles, the things that make you or your company your company? Mm-hmm. Things like responsibility or philanthropy or integrity or relationships, whatever those are.
Yeah.
The second thing is gathering facts. And, certainly in a time like this, facts are important, as we've all learned. Know the facts, know the science, whatever the facts might be, to your decision as best you can. And then recognize that there is some part of the facts that you may not know. You sort of do the best you can with the information you have in the moment. And then the third component to me is that sixth sense, that gut that leaders have, and that we all have, and to trust that gut instinct, like, the facts are leaning a little bit this way, but my gut tells me to go this way. And I'm not saying ignore the facts, but sometimes you have to just trust your gut. And I think that the best decisions are a combination of values, facts, and gut.
Yeah, I love that. And that's so important nowadays. So sometimes, it's funny hearing about, there are so many things that I thought about doing before the pandemic, right? And so many risks I wanted to take.
Yeah.
And my business was doing just fine. And I had this inkling of like, hey, maybe don't do that right now. And now here we are, right? And I had no reason to think, maybe I shouldn't, invest that money or, do whatever the case is. Had no reason to think that. And here we are in the middle of, this was not something anybody could have predicted.
No, and we were in such a big go period before this hit. I mean, it was like all systems go and then, slam into that wall at, 60 miles an hour. So good for you for trusting your gut. I know for me, when I think back on some of the decisions that I've made that I think back and go, oh, why did I decide that? Why did I do that? I ignored my gut. There was something saying, maybe that's not the best thing to do. And I thought, well, it looks like a good thing to do. I'll go ahead and do it. And I've learned, trust that.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes we, I know I've for sure learned that the hard way, right? So it is good and a relief when we finally do trust it.
Exactly. Yeah. And sometimes you just feel that little sense, that niggle, or what is that? Why am I feeling that way? And you can't even put your finger on what it is. But I've definitely, one of the benefits of age, I guess, is that you think to yourself, you know what, I've seen now a pattern and I recognize. Right.
Yeah, it's about one of the benefits of getting older and spending more time, So what, how can we be great leaders during this time? What are you seeing in terms of, how leaders are responding well and maybe not so well?
So I think the leaders that I've seen responding well, and I like to think that certainly the leaders that we're working with are doing a good job of this, it's a combination of being really compassionate and caring and empathetic for the people that surround you. And that's so important. I don't think it can be overstated. Yeah. Because people are going through so many different challenges right now, ranging from, kids at home and school decisions to sick relatives, all sorts of things. And so being really caring and compassionate and empathetic, and at the same time, continuing to remember what's the mission of my organization, what do we have to do, and how can we best do that and continue moving forward, maybe even on a scaled down basis, maybe in a pivot. I've had a number of my leaders do new strategic plans for the short run, because the strategic plan that they had for 2020 and 2021 just doesn't work anymore. And so there's no point in continuing to try to make that plan work when nobody can leave their house pretty much. Yeah. So thinking about what can we accomplish that lines up with our mission while still being caring and compassionate for the people in our organization and the people that we work with outside of our organization.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So you've been an entrepreneur throughout your career, and you've done some really different things. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I say that I'm an accidental entrepreneur. And so I started my career in management consulting, worked at Bain & Company, so giant organization, and then went to law school, started with a large law firm and worked there for several years. And then through a series of personal events, ended up starting my own law practice. And it was not something I sat down and said, in 5 years, I want to own my own law practice. I sort of just fell into it. I was working on a contract basis with my old law firm and with another company. And people started approaching me and saying, hey, could you work on this? Could you work on that? And I thought, yeah, I guess I could. And before I knew it, I had a law practice.
Wow.
And, and then I realized how much I enjoyed really running my own show, and I liked the networking, the marketing, the administrative aspects of it were fine with me, although I outsource a number of those things now. And really just enjoyed having my flexibility and autonomy. So I had my law practice until the early 2000s, which is when I transitioned into the world of executive coaching.
That's great. So what unique challenges do you feel that, legal professionals or legal entrepreneurs are having right now?
Yes, it really varies greatly depending on what area of law people practice. So, for example, someone I know has a trust and estates practice, and as you can imagine, people are thinking pretty seriously about their wills and estate planning right now, so that would be a busy practice area. I know someone else who's a family lawyer, and over these last months, family court has been closed, and most people are not looking at divorces and family changes at the moment. But they expect a big jump before too long because everybody's been enclosed with each other.
Right.
But there are just so many challenges. One of the biggest ones is that, courts have been either closed or they've been doing everything virtually. And one of the things we've seen with lawyers and other professionals is everybody has to figure out how to present themselves well on camera. And it's very different from presenting yourself well in the courtroom or in a conference room. And it's a real challenge for lawyers and other folks these days. What is it? How am I going to come across when you really can't see all of my body language? And, I'm just a floating head in a picture on Zoom or, Adobe or whatever.
Yeah. No, it's true. Two of my very oldest friends are teachers, and both of them came to me and said, teach me Zoom, please. Because school's closed and all of a sudden they needed this platform, right? And it's what an amazing pivot. Hindsight is 2020. Like, I wish we had stock in Zoom, right? But you're right. That's something that we have to think about now. How do we look on camera?
Yes. And how do you look, how do you sound, how do your PowerPoint slides come across if you have a presentation that you're giving, how are you keeping people engaged, and what keeps people going. And it is a little bit different. I mean, I'm one of those people that I'm used to doing a lot of workshops and keynote speaking, and when you're in a room with people, you get that audience energy, and when you're delivering something via webinar, you don't get that same boost of audience energy. And so how do you stay engaged as the presenter too?
Mm-hmm. Right. It can feel a lot like screaming into the void,
Yeah. But you're an expert because you do classes and all kinds of things on virtual platforms.
Thank you. I mean, but I still often, in doing webinars, I know the struggle of feeling like you're just kind of talking to yourself, right?
Yes.
People aren't sort of, that's why I love the live platform so much, because people can comment. Speaking of speaking of ask questions, feel free to put your questions in the chat. I feel like people are adapting to this, right?
Yes.
So, and this is just another piece of technology that really helps.
Yeah, and I think people are getting comfortable with, using chat, all the different functions and features that most of the platforms have that, up to now we didn't use very often because it was just a video delivery mechanism. And now it's really a video interactive mechanism for most people.
Right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned keynoting. I'd love to hear about what that was like, pre-COVID, and, have you been doing virtual keynoting or anything like that?
I have been doing some virtual, and before COVID, that was a big component of my travel, was traveling to speak at conferences or to groups either within corporations, law firms, nonprofits, associations, a whole variety. And I love doing that work and being with people, the interactivity. All of the keynotes that I deliver are interactive. The workshops are really hands-on learning. And so I've pivoted those to pivot, the word of 2020. I've pivoted those to online. And so, for example, over the next weeks, I'll be delivering a keynote for a group at lunch, women in the energy field. Then in October, I'm speaking at a virtual conference, which was going to be a live conference, of course, and have done some other things like that. And it is different because what you need in terms of visual effects with your PowerPoints, things like that, you need more. You need more now if you're going to be in front of people virtually than if you're going to be in front of them in real life.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what you keynote about, and what sorts of audiences you like to speak to.
Great, thank you. So I wrote a book a few years back called The Art of Self-Promotion, Tell Your Story, Transform Your Career, and that's my number one topic for keynotes and workshops. We talk about how you can build your brand by telling your story, and it's really important and an underutilized skill. My belief is that you can be as good as you want to be at what you do, but until you are able to comfortably and confidently talk about who you are and what you do, you won't be the one that rises to the top.
Right.
So that's my number one most requested topic. During the pandemic, though, interestingly, a couple of other topics have become hot, if you will. So we've talked a lot about resilience and how to build resiliency. 4 times like this, I delivered a keynote in the winter, and it was to a group of leaders about building leadership resiliency. And I thought, gosh, just a few weeks before they needed it. So hopefully they put things into place in time. And the other thing that's really important, I do a lot of work teaching coaching skills to leaders. And coaching skills are both how you ask questions and what questions you ask and the quantity of questions, but also how you listen. And the active listening component is really important right now. Again, because we're not face-to-face with people, we're losing a lot of the cues that we normally get. And so, for example, the conference I'm speaking at in October, the topic is active listening. And how do you listen more deeply? How do you pick up some of those things that you would normally get from someone from being in the room with them?
Right.
Yeah.
So, how do we listen well on video then? In this new normal, which is, I don't anticipate going back to in person anytime soon. Right?
Yeah, so it's a couple of things that are just really important. First and foremost, get rid of the distractions. And I think we're all guilty of, half listening to somebody because, maybe there's something I'm reading that's over on that screen, or my phone is with me, or something else is going on in my space, but really lowering the distractions. And then truly focusing on that person as opposed to focusing on what's going on inside your head, because we all have a monologue that's going on inside our heads all the time. You might be thinking right now, she's talking a lot in response to my questions. Or you might be thinking, well, at 1 o'clock when this is over, I can go have lunch. Or, or I wish I had a second cup of coffee right now. But we all have something going on inside our heads all the time, and that is what they call listening at level 1. And it's important, and it's our default. But if we spend all our time thinking either about what we want, what we need, or what we're going to say next, we miss what the other person is saying.
Yeah.
And so really focusing on being in the moment. And I can't overstate that. It's really about being present as someone speaks as opposed to thinking back or thinking ahead.
Yeah, and it sounds simple, but I mean, I can't stress it. I think that's such a great tip, because how often do we need the reminder of, hey, stay present? Staying present is so important in a conversation, right? And if I'm thinking about, I don't know, lunch or my next call or whatever else I have to do today, well, I could miss something really important, and then it's really hard to get that trust back.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we've all had those moments where you think you're listening and then someone says something or asks you a question and you realize, I just lost the last 20 seconds of what you said. And you have that like, oh, how do I recover from this? If you're really listening, you don't have that moment. And to go back to something we said earlier about, trusting your gut or listening to your gut, that's the other piece of listening that's so important, is that, sometimes I'll just have a gut that something's going on with someone. And it's much easier to pick that up if you're face to face with them. But even in hearing their voice, there's a nuance. So if I say, you say, how are you? And I say, hey, I'm fine. Mm-hmm. That's very different than if I answer you and say, yeah, fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so saying, you said fine, I didn't hear fine.
Right.
What's going on?
Right.
Yeah.
So, context is so important, because you said the same words. Right. But how different was the first one versus the second? Right.
And the tone and inflection, and certainly as you know somebody you used to hearing, how do they normally sound? What's their energy like? And you pick up when it's different.
Yeah. That's great. So where can people get in touch with you?
So the best way to get in touch with me is to go to my website, and I spell my name interestingly. I'm Debby with a Y, Debbystone, and it's debbystone.com. And you can write to me at Debby, Debby, at debbystone.com.
So, I had your company site up here, but I'm going to switch it.
You can put that too if you want to. And the other way to reach me is on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter.
Nice, awesome. So, in the interest of listening, what should I have asked you today that I didn't ask? That's always a fun question.
Well, I'll tell you, the first thing that came to mind is an odd question, which is, you could ask me what I drink when I'm not drinking coffee.
What do you drink when you're not drinking coffee?
And the answer is actually water. I always have water with me.
Nice.
And, it's one of the things that I have found is actually great about working at home as opposed to being on a plane all the time. I'm not dehydrated all the time. So, yeah. No, you've asked great questions. Those are the topics I had hoped that we would get to talk about. And the only other thing I would say is, if there are listeners out there, watchers out there who are interested in thinking about becoming an entrepreneur and what's that like and what's the process like, having done it couple of times myself and shepherded through coaching lots and lots of folks who went out on their own in whatever field they were in. It's something I really enjoy helping people do. So.
That's fantastic. So what having been through several economic shifts as you've said, what advice do you wish that you had back then?
I think first and foremost is to be flexible and to realize that if you think about what you offer, through the eyes of the people out in the world. And it may be that what you offer as your top offering now is less applicable during an economic downturn. And so you have to think, well, I also offer X, Y, Z. One of those things may be the thing.
Yeah.
To think about what do people really need right now, and how does what I offer mesh onto what people are really hungry for at the moment, and be willing to let go of what you thought 2020 or whatever year it is was going to look like, and say, I thought this was going to be the year of, lots and lots of in-person keynote speeches, and instead it's going to be the year of lots and lots of web-based speeches. Something like that, and to be willing to make that shift.
That's great. And it's funny. I just saw Annette had a question here, and then I think we answered it in the course of our conversation. So she made a really great summary about active listening, which is wonderful.
Yes.
So what you said before, which I think bears repeating, is 1, get rid of distractions. 2, be truly present, and 3, pay attention to people's tone. Is it consistent with what they are saying, to check in if they're truly doing okay or if they need something?
Yeah, and along that line, I had someone yesterday, and I said to this client of mine, how are you? And she said, well, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Isn't that what we're supposed to say? And I said, perhaps, but why don't you tell me how you really are?
Right.
And I feel like right now that's just the most important question to ask people, and let whoever you're with answer that question for real, because there's so much going on for people, and just having someone to listen is huge.
Yeah, and at this point you just don't know. They could have a sick parent at home, or maybe their kid's not doing so well, or whatever the case is.
Absolutely, absolutely. Or maybe they're just sick and tired of the 4 walls.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel you on that. There are some days I'm like, wow, I'm introverted, but wow.
What do you miss most?
Honestly, I miss going to the gym, which was my 2 or 4 time a week thing, where that was where I would go. Other than that, I just miss taking for granted that I could go see a show, go to a Broadway play, or go out to dinner with my friends, or whatever the case is. It's weird. It's weird being at home all the time.
It is, and it's amazing what we used to do that seemed like nothing, and that we took for granted, and now, wow, if only I could do that, like dinner inside a restaurant without thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, what do you miss?
I do miss eating out. I miss live music. I miss the spontaneity of being able to just go do something without thinking, is it safe? Should I go? Do I have a mask with me? All those kinds of things that go along. And much like you, I miss working out in community. It's one thing to do classes online in my basement. It's a whole lot different when I'm in the room with 20-something other people sweating it out.
Yeah.
Camaraderie.
Yeah. No, I work with a personal trainer, and I worked with her before the pandemic, and we do Zoom, and she's great. But at the same time, like, we had a group that we would work out together on Sundays, and and so I miss that. I really, I can't believe how much we took for granted these little things, right? And I think anybody that lived through this time is never going to take for granted this ever again, right? Like, I think of my grandparents who grew up during the Depression, who, like, they are savers, and they, bought gold, and they would, like, hoard away these cans and stuff like that. They never got over that. I think this is going to be our thing.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we will all really relish in the future is being able to hug the people we want to hug and when we hug. Right, and not have to hold our breath, or Exactly. I don't really miss handshakes, but I do miss hugs.
Yeah, no, I feel you on that. It's what, may you live in interesting times, right? That's the
exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been fun.
If you want to get in touch with Debby, it's debbystone.com, and we'll see you around.
Sounds good. Thanks, Marie.